All right, welcome back to the Content Marketing Playbook. It's your host, Josh Culler with Culler Media. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about using customers to promote. It could be customers or clients if you're in the service-based industry like myself, but customers or clients, using customers and clients to promote your product or services. So if you have customers, products, if you have clients, services, right? Now, this is a concept that I'm going to explain very thoroughly, and I'm going to give a few examples on what I mean by this. And ultimately, a lot of people, their mind directly goes to like testimonials, and that's a really big piece of it, right? When it comes down to the content marketing that you are going to use in this concept, but there's a lot more to it. And I want to make sure you understand why testimonials and case studies and using your customers as kind of your trophy and their success as your trophy. I want you to understand why it's important, because it's going to allow you to craft your messaging in your content marketing in order to push it in the right direction that it needs to go to get the traction it needs to get. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the Content Marketing Playbook. We're on every podcast platform, so whatever you're listening to, if you're watching the video now, whether it's on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, make sure you do go subscribe to the show. If you are already on the podcast, these do go out video format wise on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So I much appreciate a 5-star review if you are listening on Apple Podcasts. Do me a favor and go back right after the show, not now, but after the show, head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review with your thoughts. That would be awesome. And then if you ever have any questions whatsoever, hit me up with my email, josh@cullermedia.com, colored spelled C-U-L-L-E-R. Happy to answer any questions you have about content marketing, about this topic specifically, or any other topic that you have questions about. I've had many people reach out to me about random and different things, and it's never the same thing. So thank you already if you have, but make sure that you do reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. All right, so let's get into the topic for today. First thing I'm going to do is explain the concept of what this actually means to use your customers to promote your product. And there's a couple of examples of parallels I'm gonna give you an example for, so that it makes sense in your mind on what actually needs to take place when you're using your customers, because you don't ever want to make it seem like you're taking advantage of them. And really, you're not really going to put on a pedestal or put a limelight on the customers that maybe didn't like your product or you didn't have success with them, because that's just not going to benefit you in any way, shape, or form. So the goal here is to allow it to benefit both sides. So if you deliver enough value to your customer or to your client, then in turn, they're going to be willing to shoot a testimonial video for you, or even promote it in some way, shape, or form. And there's a couple ways you can go about doing this. And there's a lot of marketing sequences behind this that can take place when you go into like affiliates and stuff like that. But that's on the side of marketing, and like that's more in a different silo, the advertising and the affiliate silo. We stay content marketing on this show. So we're going to talk about it in the content marketing form. So the first thing I want to give is like an example, and this is kind of funny. I used this example a couple times already, but there's a new show on Netflix, which, by the way, if you're not watching shows on Netflix, they have some absolutely incredible shows, and there's a couple that we're watching right now. We're watching The Umbrella Academy, which is a really good show, but one that I've been hooked on is called Cobra Kai, which is, if you're a Karate Kid fan, the original Karate Kid fan, then you know exactly what that is as soon as that comes out of my mouth. And that probably gives you a really deep gut feeling, because Cobra Kai is known as the bad guy, right? And so here's the thing, is that this show, first of all, it twists you so emotionally, because it makes you wonder what your childhood was all about, because you rooted for, Daniel LaRusso and Miyagi-Do and all those guys, but, really went hard against Cobra Kai. And so the show, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it already, don't listen to this. But Cobra Kai, if you haven't watched it, don't listen to this. This is a spoiler alert, but it's not too crazy. It's kind of predictable a little bit, but I'm going to go into it anyway. So in this show, they actually have, and this is season 1, in this show they actually have where Johnny, who is the bad kid in the original Karate Kid, he actually starts back up Cobra Kai. And this is like supposed to be 40 years later. And so he starts back up Cobra Kai. Long story short, he meets a kid that's living in his apartment complex. trains him because he's getting beat up in school. Same story from Daniel LaRusso in the original Karate Kid, beaten up at school from school friends and whatnot, and then Johnny takes him in to actually start training him, and so he starts this whole dojo Cobra Kai back up, and he gets a couple more students that come in, but not enough to pay rent, not enough to actually make a dent in what he's trying to do. And then eventually they actually enter into the All Valley tournament, which is, again, the original tournament from the Karate Kid. And so they enter this tournament, and he takes this kid, Miguel, and, basically like has been mentoring him, training him for this tournament. And there's a couple other kids in his dojo that he's been training. So they go all the way through, they get to the championship, but Miguel wins the championship. And that's the short story, right? You have to watch the show. It's an incredible, really, really great show. But he makes it through all the way through the championship, wins the championship round against somebody else that I'm not going to reveal, but he wins. And then the next episode, it shows that they're back at the dojo, and it's their first time back since the tournament. And all of a sudden, there's a line of kids outside wanting to get into the dojo. And here's what happened there. The concept is that the power of a successful student of that dojo, that is what ultimately sold all these kids to come back. And obviously through the forms of content marketing, that's how it happened, because there's even points in it when, after he wins the championship, they show like some news articles and social media stuff and all that. And it blows up really big because Cobra Kai is back and all that. And so through forms of different mediums, it gets out to the world. And all of a sudden now all these kids that had never heard of Cobra Kai are wanting to get in and learn, and ultimately it allows Johnny to get the dojo back up and running, making money and all that stuff, and gets back on track. So that's a really good story for it, because what happens is that Miguel wins the championship, becomes this hero in that form, and he ultimately becomes a hero from the teachings and the learnings of his sensei, Johnny. And so that's how you have to look at your business. And this relates again to if you've never read the book Story Brand by Donald Miller. That's a really, really good book talking really about this same concept of making sure that your customers and clients act as that hero in the story, not necessarily you. You're not the story. You're not the hero in the story. You're just the sidekick or the person that got them to be the hero. And that's the example I'm using here in this, is that Johnny ultimately trained Miguel. Miguel becomes that hero, and that's how it goes. So Miguel is ultimately the customer for Johnny, his sensei, and then that success for that customer caused all these other students to come in and ultimately fill in the dojo. And that's what happens. And that's the concept that you have to get through your head. And again, if you haven't read the book Story Brand by Donald Miller, that's a really good book to kind of relate to all this that you're doing. And so how do you relate this to content marketing? Well, there's a few ways, and the ultimately, like, there's a couple ways you could chop this up. Don't make it complicated. But when it comes down to content marketing, you really want to elevate those successful customers, especially the successful customers, because if you get them plastered out there, chances are they're going to share this stuff, especially if they're, intricate clients that maybe you have a small clientele and you got a network like myself. I've got, the clients that I take on are some of the top 1% real estate investors in the country. And so if I, make my clients a hero and a success, they're going to share that with their audience, and ultimately it's going to get around. And that's really how I built my business. That's the back of the business that I built on. So, that's the concept. And so here's some forms that you can actually do this. Number one is obviously testimonials, videos, quotes. Those are really two of the primary ways that you're going to do that. So I'm not going to go too deep into actually doing that. You all know what testimonials are. That's marketing 101. But testimonials are important, especially if you do have clients. You are a service provider. This is how you're going to be successful, is off the back of successful clients. So you got to get testimonial videos. I actually like to do written testimonials as well. So I'll have them record a short video for me, and then I take a little snippet out of that and then plaster that on my website, and then put a quote card out there on social media and other places. But there's different forms, right? So this is a really big deal when it comes to businesses and getting their customers out there. Is because, like, if you are willing to put the limelight and highlight your successful customers, then what the messaging that's coming across to other, let's call them leads or prospects, is that you aren't basing your business off of what you're doing. You're basing it off of what's happening with your clients. That's the bigger deal here, is because you're highlighting the people. You're showing that you've helped your customer. You've gotten them to the destination that they want to get to. I just purchased there's a backpack company called Nomadic, and I absolutely love all their bags. I've got literally every single bag in their lineup. I actually just got the first roller luggage that I've ever had, and so like I've got all the backpacks and then even the laptop bag and everything. But I got their roller luggage, which it's normally a $500 roller luggage, just a little carry-on one, but they're like best quality that you can get. But they had a 50% off sale, so I went ahead and bought it. It was $250. We needed it. We're going on a trip next month and everything. And I bought this thing, and man, is it awesome. And what's going to happen is I'm going to use this thing, and it's going to make traveling easier for me. So instead of carrying all my camera gear on my back in a backpack, I'm going to use this roller bag that I can actually put on the plane with me, and it's going to save my back and everything. And it's just the quality of it is great. I know my camera gear is going to be protected and well. There's the hard shell is really nice and everything, and it's going to protect all my camera gear. I know that nothing's going to break in there. And so by having that, once I go on a successful trip, I'm going to go back and leave a review for Nomadic. I'm going to leave a review on their Google My Business page and their Facebook page and and wherever else I can, because the success of my journey is what I was able to get to there from the bags that I use at Nomadic. And so that's the concept you need to get through your head. And then, obviously different mediums. So I said videos, quotes are a really big deal. And then also reviews. Like, make sure if you are a business owner, like, please do not miss out on this. Every chance you get a review. This is why, like, even when I started the podcast, if you notice, I said, and Apple Podcast is really the only platform podcast-wise that you can leave reviews. And I said, leave me a review after I always say after you listen to the show, because I want people to listen to the show all the way through and get the value, and then they can go and leave a review, because I want them to get the value first, and then they'll take that and say, oh, that was actually a pretty valuable podcast, so I'm going to go and review that Josh's podcast on Apple Podcasts now. And that's the way, that's the ascension that you want to take with your customers, also with your products. But reviews are so important. Facebook reviews, Google My Business reviews, those are probably the two biggest things. And then once you get those, neat little ninja trick, if somebody leaves you a Facebook review, take a screenshot of it, clip it, post that on social media as an organic post, clean it up a little bit, maybe like add a little graphic with it, type out like how you help this customer. So if a customer says, X, Y, and Z, then, and they leave a review on your service or your product, give a case study like in the copy and say, here's how we help this person, and this is the review they left for us. And that's how you can really capitalize on somebody like literally promoting your product or your service. Now, strategy wise, what do you do? Like, how often do you put these types of content out? The short summary is it depends on how much organic and value added content you put out on, a regular basis. Like for me, I put this podcast out once a week. I have another podcast that goes out once a week. I normally do, social media postings and all that kind of stuff. And I have an email newsletter and all that. But the bottom line is that I only pepper these in every once in a while. So I normally maybe will do one form of content in this regards a week. And somebody that has a lot more content going out, you could probably put in at least 2 or 3 of these pieces a week. What you don't want to do is start to literally, put out a stupid amount of this, like one a day, because then all people are going to be seeing is like these success stories and not any value that you're getting them. Because yeah, those do significantly help, but it gets to a point where you're like really looking like you're beating your chest and you're like, all you're doing is trying to promote yourself. And you don't want to come across that way. Even though you are, you do seem genuine and you do seem like you're helping people, it doesn't come across that way all the time to people, because then it depends on you like relaying your messaging and your thoughts to them. And oftentimes that goes through a Chinese telephone and doesn't work out so well. So only pepper these in. Like, don't put out a one testimonial video every single day. Like, only do one a week or something like that. And that's how you can get traction with it. And then obviously you can always use that type of content for ads and stuff like that. Like there's a company I'm working with right now that we're building an ad campaign, and we take it ended up being like a 55-second video fully, but it's basically a sizzle reel for an event. And we have 2 or 3 testimonials that are maybe one sentence, like they last 5 to 10 seconds each. and those are peppered in throughout, and we run an ad on that. And so that's really a testimonial type ad, but that's straight advertising. And you got to understand the difference between organic content marketing and advertising, which I've done that before, so go back and listen to that show. But knowing the difference between those two is so important because you're going to use the content, a little bit differently. So the next thing I got is on your website, Google My Business, social media. These are the platforms that you are going to capitalize. Now, again, same thing for your website. Only pepper in these forms of, testimonials and customer feedbacks and reviews. Again, because what you don't want to do is somebody end up on your website and all they're seeing is review after review after review. If you've ever gone to a website and that's all you see, you know that you get turned off immediately because it just comes across like all they're doing is tooting their own horn and you're not getting any value out of them. It almost seems like they don't want to tell you the truth. They don't want to tell you what you're going to get with with their product or service. So make sure that you're only peppering in on your website as well, because that's going to be a really big deal. You got to understand what is the purpose of your website. It's to drive in traffic to your website, but also to give them a place to be able to learn and find out more about what you got going on. And obviously using those case studies. But website, Google My Business, social media, I've always talked about those. Those are really the three mediums that you're going to be putting out, or the three platforms you're going to be putting out content on. And like I always say, if you're going to put content out on any of these platforms, understand the platform first, and then you'll be able to know what medium you're going to use for that. So for instance, if you're using on your website, you can have video testimonials, but it's also a really smart idea to have written testimonials as well, because people will read that. And a lot of times what I'll see is people that have those scrolling testimonials that go through their website like this, and it's just one sentence, in quotation marks, one sentence, dash, and then the customer name, and then it scrolls to the next one. That's a really good way to do it, because then those are bite-sized pieces of testimonials that people can just look at and say, oh, cool, that makes sense, and that sounds like what, something I need. So make sure you're just, again, peppering those in. The last thing I got here is if you do use printed mediums, such as like if you do direct mailing, or if you do newspaper ads, or you do billboards, or something like that, whether it's something that's just not digital, then make sure you're still doing this, but you got to use the rule of 1/10. So if you take, say for instance, a postcard, and you take a full 10 out of 10 of that piece of postcard, only 1/10 of that postcard should be something that has a testimonial. That's what I like to use, and that's the best results that I've seen when it comes to especially non-digital type of content, because it's still content that you're putting on these postcards, but you got to make sure that you're still understanding the purpose of it. And that postcard is straight advertising. And if all you're doing is putting testimonial after testimonial after testimonial on top of that postcard, you're never going to get the point across that you want to, in order to get that messaging to them and let them know, hey, here's what we do and here's what we can do for you. And then put one testimonial on there and you'll be good. So this is a little bit of a more short and practical type podcast. I want you guys to really understand how you can use your customer base and your existing clients in order to promote your business. This is by far the most powerful thing that you can do in order to dip into those, really get into another existing audience that somebody has, whether it is a customer or a client. That somebody that you work with, like, you really want to be able to, it's again like this whole thing of the tree effect. So if I have a successful experience with Nomadic in their backpacks, I'm gonna go tell 10 people, and maybe 2 out of 10 of them are gonna get the backpacks, and then they're gonna go tell 10 people, and all I'm doing is creating customers out of that because I had a successful experience with them. So that's the biggest thing, and all that plays into customer experience and all that. But use your customers. Use them to promote your product or service, especially your successful customers, because that is going to be an extremely powerful thing, an extremely powerful tool in your content marketing in order to be able to actually, get into the ears and the eyes of others that would be in your target demographic. And ultimately, you're creating evangelists through this. The biggest thing is you got to follow through with it. So if you market something that you're doing and you deliver this for your customer and they become successful in it, if they refer somebody out to you, you got to make sure that you do the same delivery results, or maybe even better, for that person. or else you're going to get called to the carpet on it. So that's what I got for you guys today. Hopefully that brought you some value. And if it did, make sure you do go back and leave it a review if you're on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching the videos on YouTube or whatever, Facebook, Instagram, leave a comment below. And then if you guys, whatever platform that you're listening on, make sure you do go follow me on my Instagram at Josh K. Color. I would much appreciate that. Reach out to me on there. And if you have any questions, josh@colormedia.com is my email address. Happy to answer any questions that you have or any thoughts that you would like for me to cover. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining in and listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.